back. We continue with our theme of reaction on the Government of National Unity for the 7th administration. Now, Limpopo has its first woman premier-elect. That's Dr. Phophi Ramathuba. Let's speak to the DA in Limpopo, where we are joined by Lindy Wilson, representing the party. A pleasure to have you on the program this afternoon. Thank you for joining us. So, Dr. Phophi Ramathuba has really made history as Limpopo's first female premier. Lindy, what significance do you think her election holds for the province and for women in South African politics?
Well, look, we're always encouraged when we see women growing, women developing, women being given the opportunity to participate in business, politics, whatever it is at every level. So the fact that, that they have considered a woman in Limpopo, particularly in a province which tends to be more male-dominated, more culturally, this is a good sign. So we have congratulated Phophi Ramathuba on her election as the president, as the premier.
As the premier,
yeah. And yeah, it's significant. It's nice to see women growing. It's nice to see women participating and being recognized at this level, but it doesn't come without concerns.
So Dr. Ramathuba was elected over several other candidates. What do you believe were the key factors that led to her securing the premier position? And how do you view the selection process? You have highlighted in part of your remarks that this doesn't come without some concern.
Well, yes, it does. We're not sure of whom all the other candidates were. We know that there were a couple of other ladies in the lineup for this, one of who has also a dark cloud over her shoulders. So, we in the Democratic Alliance also have a very rigid and very disciplined selection process when we go into these matters. Clearly, Phophi Ramathuba has a history in Limpopo. She's been around for a long time. She served in this legislature for a long time. And I think that was probably, and she served as an MEC for a long time. So I think that was probably key to the ANC selecting her as the premier. But as I say, yes, it doesn't come without concerns.
So in her inaugural address, Premier Ramathuba emphasized progress, prosperity and unity. How do you see the DA collaborating with her administration to really achieve these goals? Are there specific areas where you foresee a productive cooperation, if you will?
Well, yes, obviously, and I said this when I congratulated her in the House yesterday, that, where there is a relationship of cooperation, trust and transparency, then we can indeed work together. Of course, Phophi Ramathuba hasn't announced her cabinet yet. And that is, that will be key to her success, is going to be the members that she selects to her cabinet. Obviously, somebody will have to replace her in the Department of Health. Now, it's no secret that health in Limpopo has been going backwards for a very, very long time. And that, in fact, health, which was under Premier Ramathuba, is not in a healthy condition at all. We have serious issues around COSTA, around service delivery. Unemployment is beyond, it's now at 42%. Almost 50% of our people are unemployed. These are things that she's going to be held accountable for. And it is going to be interesting to see who she elects as her cabinet to address these, because we're going to have to watch that very carefully.
Also interesting is that Dr. Ramathuba called on the members of the legislature to diligently fulfill their oversight roles. From your perspective, what are the most critical oversight functions that really need to be prioritized to ensure effective governance in Limpopo?
Well, I think first of all, and if we just start with basic services alone, not one of the water service authorities, and that's according to a Human Rights Commission report, not one of the water service authorities in Limpopo province is functional. They are every single one of them in breach of the agreement, the Water and Sanitation Act. People here are without water. I think that's going to have to be a key priority, and urgent attention needs to take place there. We have a huge problem in health. the clinics that were at least open 7 days a week, even if they were only on limited hours, are now not even open on weekends. So health is a key priority for us, and unemployment and poverty is astronomical. And those are things that are going to have to be addressed very, very seriously. And you're not going to be able to do this if you don't cut the corruption, the mismanagement, the terrible audit reports, and lack of oversight that we see in the departments.
You keep mentioning the fact that the new Premier has a background in healthcare. How might her experience as a medical doctor then influence her leadership style, but also her policy priorities, particularly in the context of public health and service delivery?
Well, you see, I think this is one of our concerns. I mean, just last year she was found guilty of unprofessional conduct by the Health Professions Society, and that is concerning. And this is something that, if you're a premier, you can't be found to be behaving xenophobic. You cannot be found to be guilty of misconduct. So, yeah, that is a huge concern. She doesn't come in with a good track record, not at all. She was questioned with regards to the corruption during COVID, with regards to PEs, equipment procurements. And this is why I say we're very, very cautious. And with that over her head, how good is she going to be a premier if she's already found not to be very professional in her conduct? It's not something you want to see in a premier.
When listening to the Premier's address, inclusivity and access to quality basic services was highlighted in Ramathuba's speech. What strategies do you think are essential to really improve service delivery in Limpopo? And how can the DA then contribute to these efforts as well?
Well, look, as far as the DA is concerned, we have been working on some of these, particularly service delivery issues, for a long time. The DA has laid charges against MECs, municipal managers, and senior officials all over the province in the last few months, because there is no water, there is no service delivery. And that is something she's going to have to address, and she's going to have to address it quickly. As the DA, we are monitoring those things. We are following those court cases. We are following those investigations. And we cannot afford to see another collapse. We've even been witness to our big tea estates collapsing, the big Zebedelia citrus estates have collapsed under the last premier. And Phophi Ramathuba must be aware of this, and she must be aware that we are now watching every step. But again, it's hard to foresee how this is going to play out until we know who her cabinet is. And we pray that she elects a cabinet that doesn't have a cloud or a bad reputation as well. Otherwise, we could be facing serious problems.
Of course, there were other seats that were filled in these proceedings, with the recent election of Makuma Makupereche as the Speaker, as well as Tebogo Mamorobela as the Deputy Speaker. What are your expectations for their leadership in really ensuring a balanced and effective legislative process?
Well, straight off the top of the head, we have dealt with these people in legislatures before, in this local legislature before, obviously in other positions, including MECs. And our concern is, particularly with the Speaker, that she tends to be very biased, she tends to be racist, and we are imploring her not to do that once we get into the legislature. There are rules for the House, there are rules on conduct, there are rules on discipline, and she must adhere to those at all costs. Because if she doesn't, we are sitting potentially with chaos in the House, which is not going to be acceptable. Keeping in mind that we have a lot of EFF seats there as well. And, she's going to have to be very strong, very transparent, very upright, very honest, and she's going to have to stick to the rules.
Now, considering the history of Limpopo's political landscape, what major challenges do you anticipate that the new administration will face? And what opportunities exist for transformative change?
Well, I think Limpopo can be turned around. There are opportunities here to grow. There are opportunities to change the situation. There are opportunities for unemployment. I mean, this is a very, very strong agricultural province where jobs can be created. quite quickly, obviously seasonal jobs, but that's an area where we've seen jobs being lost a lot in the last short while. That is due to lack of water, lack of electricity and service delivery. Those are issues that must be addressed. We're a big tourist, we're a tourist attraction in this province, and yet the parks and facilities and resorts that have been taken over by this government have all but collapsed with the result of lots of job losses in that sector. So there are many areas where we can turn it around, but you can't turn it around unless you have proper management, proper oversight, and efficient budget controls and consequence management for failures.
Now, as we conclude our conversation, Dr. Ramathuba also urged the executive to really execute their duties with diligence. How can the legislature and the executive then work together to ensure, call it accountability and transparency in governance?
Well, obviously that is important. The DA, we don't miss a portfolio meeting. What we find is we tend to do more oversight than the actual executive does themselves. And I think the executive must learn that their job does not entail sitting behind a desk and a chair. The job entails that you get up, you get out, you get on the road. It's not an easy province to travel. But if you're not out there talking to the people and resolving these issues, then you are not being diligent, you are not doing your job, and it's not a job that can be done behind a desk. It entails you being out there day in and day out to address problems, see those problems, and speak to the communities who are suffering under those conditions. We do that, and we're going to hold them accountable and make sure they do the same.
Thanks to our guest, Lindy Wilson, for sharing her insights on Dr. Ramathuba's election.